does an oral submission at the meeting or make written submission to the Township of Frontenac before a decision is made, the person or public body is not entitled to appeal the decision. Township staff will be in touch following the meetings and will be forwarding a copy of the decision within 15 days to the applicant or anyone who is requested to be notified. Should you have any questions after the meeting, we encourage you to reach out to staff. The applicant, the minister, or any other person or public body who has an interest in the matter may, within 20 days of making the decision or date of notice of appeal to the Ontario Line Tribunal against the decision of the committee by filing with the Secretary Treasurer of the committee a notice of appeal. I will now ask Cindy Deachman to provide an overview of how the members attending virtually can participate.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And we were having some audio issues earlier. So if there is anyone joining virtually who wasn't able to hear that, I apologize. And I don't think there's anything crucial that needs to be repeated, but if there is anything that you're questioning, you can let us know. So when the meeting is open to the public, the chair will ask members of the public if they have any questions or comments. If you're attending virtually and wish to speak, you can use the raise hand feature or the reactions feature at the bottom of your screen, and this will indicate to us that you wish to speak. If you're joining the meeting by telephone, please use the *9 to raise your hand. The meeting host will alert you once you've been unmuted and can speak. For anyone attending in person, we do ask that you state your name and address and prior to making your comments to ensure there's to ensure that we're aware that you wish to speak as well. The chat feature will be disabled for the meeting. All comments must be made verbally through the process noted above. And it looks like we have 4 people joining us virtually. Thank you.
In the unlikely account that we have connection issues and the meeting cannot be restored within 15 minutes, the meeting will be postponed and staff will be in touch with each of the applicant. A notice will also be posted on Township social media, letting you know. So with that, we'll begin. I have a motion moved by Sherry Wan, second by Francis Smith, that the agenda be adopted as, are there any late additions? As presented. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor? Motion's carried. Are there any disclosure of pecuniary interest by any member of the panel on any item listed on tonight's agenda? The minutes will indicate no disclosures. I have a motion moved by Francis Smith, second by Sherry Wan, that the minutes of August 11th, 2022 be adopted as. Did anyone note any errors or omissions? As presented. Any discussion? All in favor of the motion? This motion is carried. Okay, the next first item on tonight's agenda is B6021 Hinchinbrook Gossage. And who's going to lead the discussion on that?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. That will be me. My name is Jenny Capusto, one of the community planners with Frontenac County. This application is returning to the committee for an amendment to the conditions of provisional consent. This application was before the committee in October of last year, at which point it was granted consent. Provisional consent, so subject to conditions, including meeting the requirements for road frontage area, having surveys done, et cetera, the fairly standard conditions. There is no initial concerns with that approval. However, when the surveyor went out to complete the reference plan for the new lot, it was discovered there was some teeny parcels of land on both the north and south sides of Westport Road that were in fact owned by the property owners on the opposite sides of the road. So the parcel on the north has a little triangle of land that's owned by the person on the south. And the person on the south side of Westport Road, it's a little triangle of land owned by the person on the north. As best we can see, it's a result of a reorientation of Westport Road at some point in the past that cut off little squares and triangles, and nobody was aware of this in advance until the surveyor went out. So planning staff didn't know, the applicant didn't know. So there were some challenges with that. They came in to discuss options, and it was decided that the best option to allow for this to go ahead was to amend the conditions to expand the lot area slightly and include the creation of a right of way. I will explain more as we go through this. So the initial approval was for a lot with an area of approximately 0.86 hectares and 140 meters of frontage on Westport Road. The amended proposal will increase that lot area to 1.52 hectares and actually will decrease the road frontage to about 130 meters, both of which exceed the minimum requirements for lot creation in the rural zone. The retained parcel will be slightly smaller than before due to the increase in the lot area. However, as you can see on this next slide, the blue outline was the initial approval for the lot, and the red next to it, abutting up to it, is the area that's being added to this property. This is an area that has some wetland areas on the very eastern edge of it, but the buildable area for this lot continues to be in the field on the same side where it was during the initial approval. As such, this was not recirculated for evaluation by either conservation or public health, Township of South Frontenac for septic suitability, as the proposed building location, as I noted, remains unchanged, and there's no alteration to the setbacks required for the zoning compliance or any setbacks to wetlands that may be on this property. So if we go into a little more detail, so this is a close-up of the original lot area. With an entrance approval from Public Works that there would be sufficient area for this lot to gain its own entrance to the property. One of the requirements when we're evaluating whether a lot meets the provisions of the bylaw. This pink is a aggregate road. It's actually interestingly part of the licensed aggregate property, which, as I flip back, is on the property sort of northeast, but the access is over the subject property. So in the initial proposal, that was not an impact. There was sufficient area to meet all of the setbacks, including any setbacks from licensed and active aggregate areas. On this next slide, you can see the yellow triangle is the portion of land owned by the property owner on the south side, which unfortunately encompasses 90% of the road frontage of the lot, which we approved. So that obviously cannot continue. That being owned by another party means that this lot would only have had a resultant of about 15 meters of frontage, if that, which is not really in keeping with the intent of the bylaw. We go to this next one, you can see on the south side where the triangle of land there, that's owned by the property owner on the north. As I said, the best guess in consultation with Public Works is that a reorientation of Westport Road happened, and somehow this is what ended up being resultant. So the revised proposal is to expand the lot area. So as you can see, the triangle doesn't quite meet here. So the frontage, the 135 or so meters of frontage, will be mostly actually on the opposite side of the road that's also used to access the aggregate. That's not a problem, as this lot now includes the entrance to that road. The intention is to use that existing entrance to also access this property. The licensed aggregate and any existing easements or agreements for access will not be impacted by the creation of this lot. The request for the right-of-way is as a result of the retained parcel also using this road to access larger parts of their property. They don't have a right-of-way right now as they own the property. When we, if this lot's approved in this enlarged area and configuration, that will cut off their access and limit or cause challenges for them to access some of the fields on that side. Just while it is a large parcel and they have an alternate entrance, the topography and layout make it challenging to always get from one part to another without having this alternate entrance. So this right-of-way creation is merely to ensure legalized access over this small pink sort of rectangle within the enlarged lot, and is only being created for the benefit of the retained parcel. Sorry, I'm just making sure I hadn't undersized. So in summary, the request is to not grant new approval, but just amend the conditions of the previous approval So the planning analysis remains unchanged. All of the other factors that went into evaluating the suitability of the original approval stand with this one, as this actually is larger, has more frontage. Well, should have more frontage, actually has less frontage, as I said, but is a longer lot, sufficient building area. So planning staff are recommending approval of the amendment to the conditions, including the creation of the right of way in favor of the retained parcel.
Thank you, Jenny. Are there any comments from the applicant or their agent? Cindy, do you know?
If the applicant wishes to speak, you can use the raise hand feature. We see none.
Okay, and committee members, do you then have any questions for staff in regard to this application? Go ahead, Victor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just for clarification, Jenny, the people that are going to be building on the severed piece, they're going to use the entrance, the right of way as their entrance as well?
The intention is there's an existing entrance location here, and the alternate entrance that was intended to be used actually crosses over the property to the south. So without getting a right of way over that triangle, this is the easiest solution for them.
And that was the reason for my question.
Any other questions from the members? Jenny, we're not, just from an interest perspective, maybe you've already explained it, but having the easement going through this, it's not creating two lots, is it?
No, absolutely not. This is no different than having a private lane that goes through a property.
Okay, good. Cindy, any questions from the public in regard to this?
I do see the applicant raising her hand, so just a moment, I'll move her over. Okay, I've moved you over. You should be able to speak now. Callista, can you hear us? We can't hear you. It doesn't show that you're muted. I don't know if you have some settings on your computer to adjust. Callista, if you have any comments, perhaps you could use the chat feature. Yeah. Can you try again? Callista, can you try again? Can you hear us? Callista, I've turned the chat on. Could you maybe just pop something into the chat? You don't think it, okay. All right. So Callista, there's some technical issue. Perhaps if you have anything to put into the record, if you could email email me, because I have access to my email. We'll make sure we deal with it within the meeting. cdeachman@centralfrontenac.com.
And I assume that the records will indicate that we're not able to connect with Callista at somewhere. So is there anybody else from the public that wanted to speak to this issue?
If there is anybody else, you can use the raise hand feature. I see no one, Mr. Chair.
Okay, then I'll move forward with reading the motion. I have a motion moved by Fran Smith, second by Sherry Wan. The consent application B 6021 Hinchinbrook Gossage for the property located in part lot 3. Sorry? We can do that. Yeah. Good move.
Yeah, I've been asked to send an email and we'll give her a few minutes to have. the
Okay,
email.
I'll accept that as direction. Okay, thank you. Then we will move on to the next item on our agenda. It's B 2121 Smith reduction water body setback. Dimitri?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So for everybody in attendance today, my name is Dimitri. I'm one of the planners with the County of Frontenac. Application A2121 proposes to construct a new two-story 58 square foot or 58 square meters, 624 square foot addition to the west side of an existing dwelling and to replace and expand an existing septic system on a property that's located at Lot 2, Plan 751 in the geographic township of Kennebec, locally known as 1502C Blue Heron Ridge. The addition to the dwelling will be considered as an addition to expand a legal non-complying structure under Section 45(2) of the Planning Act, and the expanded septic system is assessed as a minor variance because the setback from the septic system to the wetland located to the south side of the property is proposed to be reduced from the required 30 meters to 15. The property is currently developed with a dwelling, a storage building to the north of the dwelling, a parked trailer that has a constructed roof structure and a deck attached to it, and also the septic system that's subject to this application. The property is designated a rural waterfront area by the township official plan, and it's zoned as RWX9 or waterfront residential exception zone 9 in the zoning bylaw. The exception zone 9 in this case refers to the plan of subdivision that formed Plan 1751 that created all these lots around the waterfront. Okay, there we go. So this application was deferred at the December 9th, 2021 Committee of Adjustment meeting because the existing septic system could not support the proposed addition, and the applicants were required to demonstrate that a new septic system or a septic system expansion could be located somewhere on the property that could accommodate the proposed addition. The reason this was requested is because the area where the existing septic system is fairly constrained with the topographic features that are on the property, mainly shallow slopes, as well as the wetland that's located just to the south of the property. Following the meeting, the applicant worked with Jewel Engineering, the Quinte Conservation Authority, as well as South Frontenac staff to identify the most suitable location for a septic system expansion or relocation. Jewel Engineering was able to determine that one of the only suitable septic locations is actually in the same area as the existing septic system, but will require an additional encroachment into the required 30-meter wetland setback to the south, which is situated just south of the laneway that provides access to the property. The engineering sketch was reviewed by the Township of South Frontenac, as well as the Quinte Conservation Authority for completeness and to see whether or not a septic system could actually be expanded within the area. South Frontenac staff determined that a suitable septic area is available within the identified parcel that was identified by the engineering drawing. However, they did say that they may need to implement some kind of erosion control measures for the installation of the septic system at the septic permit stage, given the terrain or the slopes in the area around the vicinity of the septic system. Quinte Conservation Authority determined that the small wetland to the south that's subject to the variance is fairly small and has may have limited ecological function due to its connectivity and its size and its relative location. So they determined that the proposed 50-meter setback to the wetland was supportable in this case, and overall had no comments or additional concerns with the proposed addition or the expansion of the septic system. We didn't receive any comments from the public on this file. So all in all, county planning staff recommend that the committee hear comments from the public. And if no new concerns come up that cannot be resolved today, approve the application subject to the conditions outlined in the staff report. Thank you.
Thank you, Dimitri. Cindy, are there any comments from the applicant or their agent today?
Hello? Yes, hi, it's Doug Smith from 1502C Blue Heron Ridge. I just wanted to thank Dimitri for that recap on our situation. That was very thorough. And Crystal for all her help in this as well. So that was it. Thank you.
Thank you, Doug. Anybody else there in the public? Or their
You wanna
agent?
ask
That's
the-
it, yeah. Committee members, do you have any questions in regard to the agent or the staff in regard to this application? Is there anybody in the public?
If there's anybody wishing to speak, you can use the raise hand feature. I see no one, Mr. Chair.
Okay, then I will read the motion before us. I have a motion moved by Jerry Wan, second by Fran Smith, that the minor variance and permission application A2121 Smith for the property located on part lot 2, plan 1751, the geographic township of Kennebec, for a 2-story, 58 square meter, 624 square foot dwelling addition located on the west side of the dwelling, located approximately 20 meters, 65.62 feet from the estimated high water mark of Kennebec Lake. The second story of the dwelling addition will contain a loft and match the north wall of the existing dwelling. Permission to expand legal non-conforming structure. Also, a class 4 septic system located 15 meters, 49 feet from the edge of the wetland, located on the southern limit of the driveway that provides access to the property. The proposed septic system will be located at least 30 meters, 98 feet from the high water mark of Kennebec Lake, be approved subject to conditions and reasons noted in the planning report, and that the Secretary Treasurer shall issue the notice of decision in accordance with the requirements of the Planning Act, including the providing of notice of decision to the applicant, any person or public body that made a written request to be notified, and any other person or public body prescribed. Any further discussion on the motion before us, members? All in favor of the motion? This motion is carried.
And Mr. Chair, we have heard back from the applicant, Callista, and she's just having technology issues. She was just listening, didn't have anything specific to say, just other than she hopes that it goes ahead.
So
So we can proceed with her. We can
Okay,
proceed with her.
that was the former one. So let's, good move, Mr. Hayes, I will go back and move the motion, the former motion. Is this motion moved by Fran Smith, the second by Sherry Wan, that consent application B6021 Gossage on the property located on part lot 3 and 4 concession 1 in the geographic township of Hinchinbrook for a 1.52 hectare, 3.75 acre parcel as a new lot, together with a right of way, be approved subject to the conditions noted in the planning report. That the Secretary Treasurer shall issue the notice of decision in accordance with the requirements of the Planning Act, including providing a notice of decision to the applicant, any person or public body that made a written request to be notified, and any other person or public body prescribed, and that all conditions outlined in the notice of decision shall be completed, and the certificate of official issue within a period of 2 years after the notice of decision was issued as required by the Planning Act. Does anybody want Jenny to go through that whole thing again, or any further discussion on the motion before us? All in favor of the motion? Motion's carried. You probably figure those out. Next item on our tonight's agenda is A1122 Lefebvre reduction of water body setback. Who's leading the discussion? Dimitri?
That'd be me, Mr. Chair. So application A1122 proposes to replace and expand an existing dwelling that has already been demolished at this time with a new 1-story, 71.35 square meter or 770 square foot dwelling within the exact same footprint as the existing. There's also an application to construct a new septic system and a 10 square meter or 107 square foot sleep cabin on the existing lot of record that's described as Part Lot 5, Concession 4 in the geographic township of Kennebec, municipally known as 4107 Arden Road. The property is designated rural waterfront area in the official plan and waterfront residential, or RW, in the township zoning bylaw. Now, I apologize for the graphic on the slide. It's quite difficult to make out. So what I've done here is I've highlighted some of the features that are proposed in this application and that are relevant to this application. On the left-hand side, the linear feature shows the top of a steep slope that descends down towards the Salmon River to your left-hand side. Just to the right of that, the large rectangle, that's the proposed cottage. Just below that, you will see a stream. That's the water course that's located on the west side of the property that I referred to. When you move up, there is a bunkie that's located on the, I would say, upper left-hand side of the site plan, and then the septic bed, which is proposed on the right-hand side, about in the middle of the site plan here in front of you. Okay, so the application proposes the following variances. For the dwelling, the application proposes to reduce the required 30-meter water body setback to 17 meters or 55 feet from the estimated high water mark of the Salmon River, and 7.9 meters or 25.92 feet from the edge of the existing water course that's located to the west side of the property, or as it's shown on this map at the bottom hand of your screen. For the septic system, the water body setback is proposed to be reduced to 15 meters from the Salmon River and 15 meters from the edge of the water course on the west side of the property. The way that the minor variance has been presented is that the septic system can actually be located anywhere within the identified development envelope under the condition that it is located more than 15 meters from the edge of the water course and 6 meters south of the top of the slope. For the sleep cabin, the water body setback is proposed to be reduced from 24 meters or 78.7 feet from the estimated high water mark of the Salmon River, but it will exceed the required 30-meter setback from the stream. So only one variance proposed for that one. So this application was deferred by the Committee of Adjustment on June 6, 2022, in accordance with comments provided by the Quinte Conservation Authority. At that time, QCA noted that the property is severely constrained by the presence of a water course, as well as a steep and potentially unstable slope that kind of bisects the property. To support the development, the applicant was required to survey the property to determine if there is a suitable development envelope and how large that development envelope is, and to submit a slope stability study that ensured that the future development won't be impacted by erosion hazards in the future, and that any type of development that takes place on that ridge is stable and that the slope does not collapse. At this point, both of these requirements have been met and have been reviewed by all relevant commenting agencies. Final comments provided from the Township of South Frontenac and Quinte Conservation Authority indicate no objection to the proposed development. South Frontenac staff noted that the identified septic location is not ideal, that the septic location that I referred to is the one that was shown on the site plan, but they did say that there is a suitable area where a septic system can be installed within the identified development envelope on the survey sketch that was provided as part of that application. So in accordance with these comments, county planning staff are recommending a condition that allows for flexibility in the installation of the septic system. Basically, as long as the septic system is separated by a minimum of 15 meters from the edge of the water course and 6 meters from the top of the slope, planning staff are okay with its construction and its placement. Quinte Conservation Authority determined that the slope is stable by reviewing that slope stability study that the applicant had submitted. And the survey sketch was able to demonstrate that there is a suitable development envelope, although it's quite tiny. The combination of the sketch that was submitted by the applicant and the site plan did demonstrate that everything they're proposing can fit into that development envelope that's been identified and that QCA has determined is stable. So in accordance with all of this, planning staff are recommending for the Committee of Adjustments to take questions from the public. And if no new issues arise that can't be dealt with today, approve this application subject to the conditions outlined in the staff report. Thank you.
Thank you, Dimitri. Are there any comments, Cindy, from the applicant of the region?
Don't believe we have the applicant on, do we? No. We do not, Mr. Chair.
Okay, committee members, do you have any questions regarding this application of staff or the region? No? Is anybody from the public are interested?
If there's anyone from the public wishing to speak, please use the raise hand feature. I see none, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you. Then I'll read a motion moved by Sherry Wansick by Fran Smith that the minor variance and permission application A1122 Lefebvre for the property located in Part Lot 5, Concession 4, Part 3 in the geographic township of Kennebec, a one-story 71.35 square meter, 770 square foot dwelling located approximately 4.25 meters, 14 feet from the top of a steep slope to the north, approximately 17 meters, 55 feet from the estimated high water mark of Salmon River, and at least 7.9 meters, 25.92 feet from the edge of the water course located on the west side of the property. Permission to expand legal non-conforming structure. A class 4 septic system located 6 meters, 19.7 feet from the top of the steep slope to the north, 15 meters, 62.3 feet from the high water mark of the Salmon River, and 15 meters, 62.3 feet from the edge of the watercourse located on the west side of the property. Minor variance. 10 square foot meter, 107 square foot sleep cabin located 7 meters, 22 feet from the top of the slope and approximately 24 meters, 78.7 feet from the estimated high water mark of the Salmon River. Minor variance be approved, subject to the conditions and reasons noted in the planning report, and that the Secretary Treasurer will issue the notice of decision in accordance with the requirement of the Planning Act, including the providing the notice of decision to the applicant and any person or public body that made a written request to be notified, and any other person or public body prescribed. Further discussion on this motion before us. All in favor of the motion? This motion is carried.
You can come up now, Greg.
Next item on tonight's agenda, I think we'll treat them both together. B 2022 Olden McClellan and 2122 Olden McClellan. Who's leading discussion? Jenny?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. That will be myself tonight for this one. This is another application that is returning to the committee. This was before the Committee of Adjustment at our last meeting in August. It was deferred at that time for review of some concerns that were raised by public members. I will just go through the application again to make sure we're all on the right page. This is 2 applications for the creation of 2 new lots from a well, currently vacant but under construction parcel on Bell Line Road. The first lot will be approximately 0.91 hectares, or just over 2 acres in area, with 99 meters of frontage on Bell Line Road. The second parcel is proposed to be about 0.86 hectares, again, just over 2 acres, with approximately 81 meters of frontage on Bell Line Road. The subject property is designated both rural area with a mineral aggregate resource overlay, and the property is zoned rural exception zone 9. Special features on this include the sand and gravel, and that's really just the aggregate potential resource overlay. That's one of the official plan notations for that potential in this area. These applications were circulated for review for septic suitability as well as conservation, as there's a small section of this property that sort of touches Warren's Lake, but we will address part of that in a minute. Comments from the Township of South Frontenac indicated no objection to either application as submitted. They were both suitable for septic locations. And comments from Rideau Valley Conservation had similar no objections, as both proposed lots are well away from the waterfront and are not going to have any impact on Warren's Lake. The comments from the public, as I noted, had been received. Both letter was submitted and comments were spoken into the meeting. So here on the next slide, you can just say the discussion was regarding the existing site-specific zoning and corresponding site plan agreement that was put in place. That agreement was for the creation of a right-of-way as well as a parking area and dock access to Warren's Lake. This was put in place during the creation of 3 other lots down Bell Line Road that do not have any frontage on the lake. But at the time when they were severed from this parcel, were granted water access through this right of way and site plan agreement to regulate the development of both the driveway, parking area, and dock water access into Warren's Lake. There was concerns expressed that the creation of these 2 lots were not in conformity with the site plan agreement, and that maybe an amendment to that drawing would be required to ensure that that was up to date and fully understood by both the property owner and the public who had input on this. At that point, the committee deferred making a decision until legal advice was obtained through the township solicitor regarding these requirements for an amendment. Planning staff were of the opinion that it was sufficient with the recommended conditions. However, it never hurts to just confirm and make sure that, we are following the proper procedures and there aren't any additional legal requirements that perhaps we weren't aware of at that point. So on here's sort of a summary. There was a number of emails back and forth between the township and the solicitor asking some questions and clarification. The result was that it's the opinion of the solicitor that an amendment to the site plan drawing is not required prior to the approval of the creation of either of these proposed lots, and that removal of that site plan from the title of the proposed lots as suggested by a planning staff would be sufficient and will not impact the existing site plan agreement, even though it would mean the drawing was slightly different than what was put forth during the site plan and the zoning at that time. Understandably, best practices, yes, would be to update that drawing to make sure that everything fully lines up. However, as this agreement is between the property owner and the township, if neither one has any concerns with that drawing not being 100% accurate to the current up to date, then it was felt that it was really more of an administrative exercise in updating that rather than a requirement, given the fact that the area applicable and governed by the site plan is actually well away from where either of the proposed lots are. The solicitor further reconfirmed that the site plan agreement and the OMB decision, as well as the subsequent zoning that resulted from that OMB decision, was not intended and did not limit the construction of the single family home, which is currently under construction on the retained parcel, and also is reiterated as said in the township zoning bylaw site specific exception zone. As that is clear in those decisions, coupled with the township site plan control bylaw not requiring site plan approval for single family home that's constructed not on the waterfront, as both the location of the retained parcel and things, there was no need for the property owner to get approval or amend that site plan in advance of applying for or obtaining the building permit for the house under construction on the retained lands. Township staff also looked into a couple of other options. There isn't a possibility that you can actually register site plan, and this is more of a helpful thing going forward, as we will probably have more, although some delegated authority, that you can actually register site plan on part of a property and part of a PIN. While it will show up registered on title under the entire PIN, you can actually specify within that it is only applicable to a portion of the property or a portion of a specific development. So that was handy to know that going forward, that can be done. The applicant has indicated a desire to come in with some amendments to this site plan, including one of the conditions that requires a locked gate to be placed at the entrance to the right of way from Bell Line Road. That was suitable and sufficient at the time when the retained parcel and the other lots that use this access were vacant. However, as the small residential waterfront parcel near the parking area, as well as the retained parcel, are now under development with year-round homes, it's not necessarily practical or reasonable to have a locked gate at the entrance to Bell Line Road when there's houses that use this as their driveway also. Partly it's a pain to have to get out and unlock the gate each time. Partly there was concerns expressed by both property owners that if that gate was locked while they were up at their house and an emergency should occur, that emergency services would be unable to access that right of way. And that is a significant concern, especially fire, ambulance, paramedics, things like that. If you need the emergency services, there's a reason you've called, having them encounter a locked gate. The contracts are that they don't go through locked gates. They do what they can, but that could actually impact the safety and security of those that do have houses in there. So that is something that has come in. Staff will be working with the property owner to process that. Just wanted to let the committee know that that is coming in. So likely we'll be looking at having them amend the site plan drawing as part of that amendment process anyway. But as noted, it wasn't required necessarily for the creation of these lots, but as they are coming in for another amendment and other alterations, it makes sense then to, once they have the reference plan completed for the proposed lots, that they update the site plan agreement similarly as part of the other amendment process. As such, the conditions recommended in the planning report submitted to the committee last month remain unchanged today. And those conditions include that the standard 2 years of all conditions need to be met within 2 years, and acceptable, reference plan legal description. It's only for the new lots, nothing to be conveyed, separately or have impact on that right of way. Road widening along the frontage of the proposed severed parcels as determined if required by survey. A couple of the added conditions planning have put in is that the lots to be created are rezoned from a rural exception zone 9 to straight rural, as they were not subject to that site plan, and the exception zone was put in to include some limitations with regards to that site plan agreement and development on the opposite side of the property. Another requirement is to have that site plan agreement removed from the lands to be severed, and as confirmed by the lawyers for the township, that would be sufficient to ensure that these lots would not be subject to that site plan, and that removal will not impact anything with regards to the site plan agreement. Other conditions including up to date on taxes, any abandoned wells, and confirmation that they've been fulfilled. So fairly standard conditions, just with the addition of that rezoning and making sure that site plan is removed from title before the lots are created. And so based on that, planning staff are recommending approval subject to those conditions.
Thank you, Jenny. Do we have any comments from the applicant? Okay, that's good. Committee members, do you have any questions in regard to the applicant or in regard to these? Okay, is there anybody in the public that have questions or comments in regard to this application?
I did that. If there's anyone from the public wishing to speak, please use the raise hand feature. I see no one, Mr. Chair.
Nobody? Okay. Not hearing anybody from the public, I will go ahead and read the motion. I have a motion moved by Fran Smith, second by Philip Smith. The consent application be 2022 Olden McClellan for the property located in part lot 20 concession 10, the geographic township of Olden for 0.91 hectare, 2.25 acre parcel as a new lot be approved subject to the conditions noted in the planning report. That the Secretary Chair shall issue the notice of decision in accordance with the requirements of the Planning Act, including the providing the notice of decision to the applicant, any person or public body that made a written request to be notified, and any other person or public body prescribed, and that all conditions outlined in the notice of decision shall be completed, and the certificate of official issued within a period of 2 years after the notice of decision was issued as required by the Planning Act. Any further discussion, panel? All in favor of the motion? Anyone against? No, this motion is carried. Yeah, the information basically on the next application is very similar. Pardon? No. Hearing the same discussion, I will read the next motion. It's moved by Philip Smith and seconded by Nick Gowdy. The consent application be 2122 Olden McClellan for the property located in part lot 20 concession 10, the geographic township of Olden for a 0.86 hectare, 2.12 acre parcel as new lot be approved subject to the conditions noted in the planning report. The Secretary Treasurer will issue the notice of decision in accordance with the requirement of the Planning Act, including and providing the notice of decision to the applicant, any person or public body that made a written request to be notified, and any other person or public body prescribed, that all conditions are outlined in the notice of decision shall be completed, and the certificate of official issued within a period of 2 years from the notice of decision was issued as required by the Planning Act. Any further discussion? All in favor of the motion? This motion is carried. Run out of ink here. Run out of ink here. Next item for tonight's meeting is application for minor variance A1722 Miller. Dimitro, you're on.
Thank you. Application A1722 proposes to replace an existing mobile home with a permanent dwelling on a property located at 1016 Horseshoe Lane, legally described as Part Lot 8, Concession 5 in the geographic township of Kennebec. The dwelling replacement will include a second-story addition to the west half of the existing dwelling footprint and an increase to the ceiling height on the east side of the dwelling to create a great room. Both of these will be considered under permission to expand a legal non-complying structure under Section 45(2) of the Planning Act. Part of this replacement will require a portion of the north wall, so the wall that faces the lake, to move closer to the lake by about 1.22 meters or 4 feet. This will represent a total addition of approximately 6 square meters or 64 square feet. This portion of the application therefore proposes to reduce the water body setback from the required 30 meters to 20.78 meters. The proposed development will be taking place within an existing developed lot of record that's designated as rural waterfront area in the official plan and waterfront residential, or RW, in the zoning bylaw. This application was circulated to the Township of South Frontenac and Quinte Conservation Authority for comments. South Frontenac staff did not object to the application, and they noted that a septic system can most likely be expanded within the same location as the existing, but that will be confirmed after a performance review is done at the building permit stage. So they're going to need to see whether or not the septic system can actually handle the increased proposed sewage flows from the addition, or if it can just be if the existing septic system can function properly with the added square footage. Quinte Conservation Authority has objected to the addition portion or the minor variance portion application of this application because it will result in a further reduction to the already deficient water body setback. Essentially, Conservation Authority policy is that if there are any more additional footprint that's located within the riparian zone or within the 30-meter setback, their policy states that it's an automatic no, essentially. They also noted concerns with the existing septic location and the potential encroachment into the required wetland setback of the wetland located just south of the property. However, in speaking with our septic staff from South Frontenac, it looks like if the septic system can be replaced in situ in the same location as the existing, that encroachment will not be an issue. If, however, the septic system needs to be expanded in such a way that it does get closer to the wetland, then an additional variance would be required. At this point, I think it will be unlikely, given the fact that if the septic system were to come closer to the wetland, it will also come closer to the existing hydro easement that's on the property, as well as the laneway. And there are specific setbacks in the building code that require for those setbacks to be maintained. So it's unlikely that the septic system is going to be moving any further south, closer towards the wetland. So after considering the comments from QCA staff, county planning staff believe that the proposed addition and additional water body setback encroachment is actually relatively minor, and it does meet the 4 tests of minor variance. So in the consideration of this decision, as I've described in the report, county planning staff believe that the addition is modest in size, will not require any vegetation removal, and will be located entirely within the maintained lawn portion of the property. It's impossible to move the building back. Well, it's not impossible. It is possible to move the building back, but practically you don't want to do that, because if you move the building back, you encroach into the area, the limited area where the septic system is already existing. And in my view, it's the most ideal location of where the septic system should be located, because it is in the furthest location from the lake as practically possible. So since the vegetation along the shoreline provides an adequate screening to the proposed addition, there's not going to be any visual impact to the actual addition itself. And since the shoreline is naturally vegetated, that does provide a buffer as far as any anticipated, if there's any anticipated runoff or anything of that nature coming from the proposed addition. So overall, county planning staff do not anticipate any negative impact on Horseshoe Lake as a result of this application, despite QCA comments. So overall, county planning staff are of the opinion that the proposed application meets the 2 tests of permission under section 45.2 and the 4 tests under section 45.1 of the Planning Act. And as such, planning staff recommend that the committee hear comments from the public. And if no new issues come up that cannot be resolved today, approve this application subject to the conditions outlined in the staff report. Thank you.
Thank you, Dimitri. Are there any comments from the applicant or their agent, Cindy?
Please use the raise hand feature if you wish to speak. Okay, just a moment. Okay, I've moved you over and you should be able to speak now.
Okay, it's Mike Miller. My wife and I, Leslie, own the property. It's technically in her name. We jointly own the neighboring property. Thank you very much for all the information, and thank you, Crystal, for all the help with respect to this. I certainly agree with the status of the discussion that Dimitri brought forward. I was kind of baffled by Quinte Conservation and their decision to not agree with that, because the actual setback of the building is still further back than the existing deck, and as such won't impact the situation at all. My family's owned the neighboring property for 50 years and plans to continue owning both of them actually for the foreseeable future. So certainly appreciate that.
Thank you, Mike. Committee members, do you have any questions of staff or the applicant in regard to this application? Go ahead, Francis.
Just a comment that this makes very good sense in what we're doing, and the septic is at the back of the property, and it can't get any further on the lot. So I don't see an issue with it. And again, the addition is a modest size. So I support it.
Go ahead, Victor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, the only concern that I have is that Quinte has raised a flag. I'm just going to read a couple of things from the report regarding Quinte Conservation. So first of all, QCA staff noted they are unable to support the application. Then later on in the 4th paragraph, since QCA policy does not support further encroachment during enlargement. Oh, and now I touched it. I shouldn't have touched it. And now it won't work. Anyway, they are objecting to it. So my question is sort of, are the hands of Quinte staff tied on this because they have a certain policy that they just simply cannot approve and they must automatically object?
Thank you for the question through the chair. I don't know the true answer to that. I don't know if their hands are tied. I can't really speak on behalf of QCA staff. In my experience, so far, multiple when there's situations that arise such as this, where there is additional encroachment or additional footprint that's proposed within the water body setback, and already deficient water body setback, the conservation authorities usually always opposed. So my interpretation of the way that they approach their policy is that if there is additional encroachment within that water body setback, then it's an automatic objection or some kind of negotiation that takes place where there are things that could be done along the shoreline, for example, that would provide a net benefit to the environment, and that would be in line with both the township official policy as well as or official plan, as well as the conservation authority official plan. So I know it's a long-winded answer, but my interpretation is yes, but I don't know for sure.
Follow up on that. I just want to let everyone know that I'm a member of the executive board, I'm executive committee member of Rideau Valley, and Rideau Valley's staff's hands are tied. If an application is contrary to policy, they must object. And then what happens is it would come to the executive committee as an appeal. And there have been cases where it comes to the executive committee and we look at it and it's, oh, the planning is great here, but the staff are required to object to it. And I'm thinking that this is probably a similar situation, that the Quinte staff, they are required to object, and they probably underneath the table, they would say it's fine. So I have no objection to this as well.
Just one question I would have, because they said no, is this going to create any problem for the applicant to get a building permit or to do what's necessary on that lot?
Thank you for the question. I don't know the answer to that. All I can really speak to is the processes, the minor variance process at the township. So the township is essentially asked to consider whether or not the addition meets the 4 tests of minor variance, and that's what we're here to assess. I'm not quite sure if this will be an issue for the applicant when it comes time to getting permits or any type of approval from Quinte Conservation Authority in their comments. So I'm going to, again, sorry for the long-winded response, but I'm going to go back to just some history with this file. I didn't receive official comments on this file until the day after I submitted my report. When I had discussions with QCA staff, they had not mentioned the fact that if the committee were to approve this today, that they would not be able to, or the applicant would not be able to get a permit on QCA's side. So I don't really know the answer to that question, but it was never something that was brought up to us before we could make a recommendation on the file.
I guess just a follow-up, if the applicant does have an issue, there is an appeal process that we can sort of maybe work with them to do that.
I believe if there is an appeal process, it will be through the Quinte Conservation Authority and not necessarily the township. So as of today, once the decision is made, the township's job is done, and it'll be up to Quinte Conservation Authority and their processes to see if they will consider something like this, if it needs a permit, and if there is an appeal body or an appeal process.
So we'll deal with that when it comes along. Is there anybody in the public that have any questions in the comments in regard to this application, Cindy?
If there's anyone wishing to speak, please use the raise hand feature. We're down to 2, so. I see no one, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Then I will move forward with the motion moved by Nikki Godfrey, second by Philip Smith, that minor variance and permission application A1722 Miller for the property located on Part Lot 8, Concession 5, Part 35 in the geographic township of Kennebec has a second-story addition to the west half of the existing dwelling footprint and dwelling footprint and an increased roof height to accommodate a great room on the east half, 1 story of the dwelling. The overall height of the building will increase from 3.7 meter, 12 feet to 8.62 meters, 28 feet, and permission to expand legal non-conforming structure. The dwelling addition of 6 square meters, 64 square feet. This will include a 4.5 square meter, 48 square foot addition to the north side of the dwelling and a 1.5 square meter, 16 square foot addition to the northeast corner of the dwelling. A 4.5 square meter, 48 square foot addition will reduce the existing water body setback from the dwelling to the high water mark of the Horseshoe Lake from 22 meters, 72 feet to 20.78 meters, 68.18 feet, and a reduction of 1.22 meter, 4 feet. Minor variance be approved subject to the conditions and reasons noted in the planning report, and that the Secretary Chair shall issue the notice of decision in accordance with the requirement of the Planning Act, including providing a notice of decision to the applicant, any person or public body that made a written request to be notified, and any other person or public body prescribed. Any further discussion? This building, they're going to have to put an elevator in it at 28 feet. So then I will call the motion. All in favor of the motion before us? This motion is carried.
These guys can come out.
Next item on tonight's agenda is A1822, maybe reduction of water body setback. Dimitri, go for it.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Application A1822 seeks permission to replace and expand a dwelling on a property located at 1099C Simmons Lane in the geographic township of Hinchinbrook. It's legally known as Part Lot 19, Concession 3. The dwelling that's proposed to be replaced was destroyed by falling trees as a result of the 2022 Derecho event earlier this year. The actual replacement of the dwelling does not need planning permission and can be reconstructed as of right. What the committee is asked to consider today is actually the proposed 18.6 square meter or 200 square foot addition to the rear of the cottage. So by the rear, I mean on the road side of the cottage, not the water side. And an addition of a 41.5 square meter or 447 square foot roof overhang that will create a covered porch over top of the wooden deck that's proposed to be reconstructed. As you'll see on the next slide, the wooden deck is on the water side of the cottage. So essentially they're just going to be extending the roof and it's going to provide a covered porch, but that porch is not to be enclosed. So it does not contribute to gross floor area. The property itself is developed with a garage, a shed, and a gazebo, with the gazebo being located fairly close to the shoreline. The building that's proposed to be replaced is located approximately 10 meters or about 33 feet from the high water mark of the water. And it's considered to be a legal non-complying structure because it was constructed prior to the current zoning bylaw coming into effect. The property is designated a rural waterfront by the official plan and zoned waterfront residential, RW, by the zoning bylaw. The application was circulated to South Frontenac as well as Rideau Valley Conservation Authority for technical comments. South Frontenac staff noted that the existing septic system appears to be in place, but a performance review will need to be done at the building permit stage. South Frontenac staff noted that if the septic system needs to be replaced, it can most likely be replaced in situ or within the same footprint and location as the existing. And the existing septic system is located just behind on the water side portion of the roadside portion of the dwelling. So it's farther away from the lake than the actual dwelling itself. The RVCA, or the Rideau Valley Conservation Authority, had initially objected to the application due to the poor condition of Elbow Lake. They noted that since the dwelling has been removed and it's proposed to be replaced, that this actually presents a good opportunity to improve the quality of the shoreline of the water body, either through situating the dwelling in a different location or through some replanting plans or something that would have a positive net benefit impact on the quality of the shoreline as well as the quality of the lake. County planning staff do agree that there is opportunity to improve the shoreline and the quality of Elbow Lake, but the township zoning bylaw does allow for the replacement of destroyed non-complying structures. So the analysis that is done in this application should only be applied to the addition portion of the proposal and not the replacement structure itself. After some discussion between county staff and the RVCA, as well as the applicants, the RVCA agreed to support the development under the condition that the shoreline is revegetated in some capacity. So what this looks like is the establishment of a minimum vegetative buffer about 3 meters or 10 feet of depth along the entire shoreline to help improve water quality. So what that basically means is no cutting of grass within 10 feet of the shoreline, except for the location that you would use to access any docks or any other types of shoreline structures. County staff also notified the applicants of this condition and have included this as part of the recommended conditions section of the application. In discussion with the applicants, we've also included the replacement of at least six maple trees onto the property along the shoreline as well, and that will be used to compensate for some of the trees that were lost during the Derecho event. Overall, the replacement of the trees as well as the revegetated buffer along the shoreline should have a positive net impact on the quality of the water body. After all this was brought back to RVCA, RVCA has since sent additional comments indicating that they have no objection to the application under the condition that I had just described. So overall, county planning staff are of the opinion that the proposed addition meets the 2 tests of section 45.2 and recommend the committee take questions from the public. And if no new issues come up, approve this application subject to the conditions outlined in the staff report. Thank you.
Thank you, Dimitri. Any comments from the applicant? Before that? Yeah.
Just a little bit of lag time there.
Just the way the, it shows where the cottage is. That's not, the cottage is lengthwise, it's not wide like that. It should be turned this way. Not like this, but like this. I'll show you.
Okay, thank you. Honestly, not aware. I wasn't aware of that. This is, it doesn't really make a difference, the orientation of the cottage, at least because it's going to be within the same footprint as the existing. The site plan that you see in front of you here is what was submitted with the application form. So this is not something that planning staff would have drafted up. I'm not quite sure where this came from, but this is directly attached to the application.
I think it's on frontnacmaps.ca.
It's this specific, I'm speaking about this specific sketch. This specific sketch was attached with the application that was circulated to county planning staff. And this is the site plan that we were working off of. So if there was a mix up in the orientation of the building, it did not come from county planning.
And then there was another, if you can go to the septic sketch.
So this is the sketch related to the actual cottage itself.
Right there where it says under comments, septic performance review will be required at permit stage. If that's the same as an inspection, the inspection calls for a running water hose. We don't have that. There's no hydro or water to that property right now. So we can't run a septic inspection at this time, but we'd be willing to do it once the property is erected.
I think, yeah, so thanks for letting us know.
They don't need water. They'll just pull your
They told me.
old permit and review it and see if that bed and tank are acceptable for the new cottage. So they'll probably go on site, but they'll just pull up your old plans or whatever, or if there isn't any, then they go on site, they'll have probably the lids dug up and maybe a run or two of the bed to see what's there.
Not much to see.
So this, I just want to clarify that this septic performance review is a comment that came directly from the Township of South Frontenac. So the way that their condition is worded is that essentially you will be required you will need some kind of approval from the Township of South Frontenac regarding the septic system before you can obtain your building permit. So South Frontenac will be able to, I'm sure this is not a new situation to them in terms of like not having running water and doing performance reviews on septic systems. So my idea is that they will work with you to try and figure out how to sorry, we got a little bug there. So I think basically the way that their condition is worded is that South Frontenac has to just approve the septic system to make sure it's functioning properly before you could obtain a building permit. I don't know exactly the method that they will use to determine its capacity, whether they're just going to be looking at paperwork or whether they're going to take a look at if the tank is in a good state or good condition. It is a standard clause that's included with any type of replacement or any type of addition that requires septic services. So long story short, I'm not quite sure exactly what method the township of South Frontenac will use, but if they are satisfied that the septic system is functioning properly, then your condition will be met as far as this minor variance goes.
Okay, and Andy Dillon, when he was out there, he said the septic was fine, but I mean, he didn't inspect it, but he said your septic is okay.
I think so. That's, I think, would be a discussion between Andy or the township chief building official, as well as Township of South Frontenac. So they can, I don't really know exactly the relationship between the CBO and South Frontenac as far as septic approvals go. But essentially, if South Frontenac does say that your septic system is good to go, then this township will be satisfied as far as this approval goes. But if the township of South Frontenac or the township of Central Frontenac's CBO does indicate that some septic performance upgrades or septic upgrades are required, then you would have to do those before you can rebuild the structure.
How do I get this person to come out and check the septic?
So after a decision is made today, you will be able to take that decision to South Frontenac and let them know, hey, I'm looking to rebuild the house. One of the things that you require of me is a septic performance review. How do we go about doing that? And I'm sure Crystal will be able to get you in touch with the right folks at the township of South Frontenac, and they'll be able to guide you through the process.
I thought this was the township of South Frontenac.
Central. So
Central.
yeah. So the way that it works is the township of Central Frontenac, we're looking at the idea of whether or not your building could be expanded, right? And whether or not it could be reconstructed. The township of South Frontenac focuses solely on septic review in this context. So they are the approval authority for septic systems in the entire county.
So if this is approved today, we just give them a call tomorrow?
South Frontenac?
Yeah.
That's correct. Yeah, that's right. Yes. Yeah.
You might want to talk to Andy
Yeah.
too as well, because because I think Andy probably told you when he was on site that septic was okay. Because he doesn't have to get septic comments if you're only building a small percentage onto something. But because you weren't building onto anything at that time, you were replacing exactly what was there.
Yeah.
The septic could handle what was there then, so it should be able to handle what was there now is probably what he was thinking. But now that there's a little bit of an addition going on, it might be over the percentage, and you might have to have the performance review to make sure that with the addition, the septic will now handle that. So
Yeah.
I would talk to Andy first.
Because we,
Adding any bedrooms.
no, it's still just the same 2 bedrooms. The cottage is a little bit bigger. That's it.
Yeah,
There's no dishwasher going in. There's no washing machine.
so talk
you
to
know-
Andy to see if he requires new, like, comments from South because of it being a replacement kind of thing first.
Yeah.
See what Andy wants. He
Remember that.
can't issue the permit. He'll let you know.
Yeah, the way that the condition is worded, I just wanted to add is that it's to the satisfaction of Central Frontenac. So if the CBO of the township is satisfied that no septic review is required, then they can sign off on it. So, but if the South Frontenac does say that a septic review is required, then one is simply going to be required. So I think it really depends on what the CBO says as well as what South Frontenac say. But I would give, after today, I would give Andy a call, perhaps tomorrow or next week. Let him know what the situation is, and then he'll provide you some more with some more information, whether or not we need to go through the South Frontenac septic review process, or it's something that could be handled by the CBO.
Okay. Because like that company that I called was from Charlotte Lake. I'm not sure where they were, but they said they required running water to do the test.
So that was probably for a re-inspection.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Okay.
Are there any committee members? Do you have any questions of the applicant? Cindy, is there anybody in the public that have any questions with regard to this application? No?
Anyone from the public, you can use the raise hand feature. I see no one.
Okay, then I'll read the motion. I have a motion moved by Smith, second by Cody. The permission application A1822 may be for the property located on part lot 19, concession 3 in the geographic township of Hintonbrook to reduce the front yard water body setback for 18.6 square meter, 200 square foot addition at the northwest side of a dwelling. The addition will square off the cottage and will not further encroach on the existing 10 meter, 33 foot water body setback. Also a 41.5 square meter, 447 square foot roof overhang addition along the deck proposed to be replaced. The roof overhang will not expand the existing footprint of the dwelling. The covered deck will not propose to be enclosed and be approved subject to the conditions and reasons noted in the planning report and that the Secretary Treasurer shall issue the notice of decision in accordance with the requirement of the Planning Act, including providing a notice of decision to the applicant, any person or public body that made a written request to be notified, and any other person or public body prescribed. Further comments, panel? I'll call the question. All in favor of the motion? This motion is carried, and you can move forward.
Couple weeks.
So like we can't start putting the foundation.
We'll discuss this later.
Oh.
We'll discuss it with Andy later, like, I mean, we don't need, yeah,
They are subject to a 20-day appeal period as well.
yeah, you have a 20-day appeal period.
Yeah, so you can't do anything for 20 days, but you can do the process.
You can have everything handed in and ready to go, and Andy can issue it within 20 days. But yeah, we'll work with Andy and
Maybe we'll do this. You're good to go.
And we fill in and the district are on your policy guidance and actually answering the phone.
You'll work, we got pretty good staff here. I'm sure you can work with them, so.
Yeah.
Okay, where am I at here in this? Are there any other planning? Nothing further under planning for tonight's agenda? Okay, then I have a motion moved by Cotting, second by Smith, that this meeting adjourned until 4 p.m. October 13th, 2022, virtually and in person, Opa Hall, 1170 Garrett Street, Sharpet Lake. Anybody not voting for this? All in favor? Motion carried.
Thank you.